I'd like to call to order the July 25th meeting of the Clive City Council. Would the clerk please call her roll?
Mayor Edwards,
Here.
council members Klein,
Here.
McCoy,
Here.
Weaver,
Here.
Michelinani,
Here.
Judkins is absent.
Would you all please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next up, we give citizens the opportunity to approach the council on an item that is not on the agenda. And while Pete checks to see if there's anyone online, if there's someone in the council that wishes to address the council, please approach the podium. In the meantime, I'll remind everyone of our operating principles. We follow the pillars of character counts, endeavoring at all times to promote and model the principles of trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. In all that we do, we try to live up to those principles, and we expect everyone here to do so as well. Pete, do we have anybody online?
Yes, for those of you online, you can get our attention in the council chamber using the raise hand function on your Zoom screen. At the bottom of your app, you will see apps or other tools that you can use to raise your hand and get our attention. Your Honor, I do not see hands going up.
Seeing none and seeing no one approach the podium, we'll move to our presentations. Matt.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight, I wanted to honor two staff members that are retiring from the city of Clive here, starting with Chief Inema, who's been with the city of Clive since June of 2012. There's a lot of improvements that the chief has made in his time here at the city of Clive, including a new facility that's been constructed, a number of additional staff members that have joined our team, promotions that he's overseen and recommended. Also, we were one of the first departments in the metro area to have body cameras on our officers, and that was part of the chief's leadership. And we've since now have gone to our multiple new generations of those cameras since he's been with us. Crime-free multi-housing, massage parlor program, a number of other, the crisis intervention team, which is more of a recent addition, of course, flock camera and other technologies that he has recommended to you all and we've adopted in Clive. And then as Pete will share later tonight, there's a reason that we have really high rankings for safety in this community, and Chief's leadership in the Clive Police Department is a big part of that. So what we wanted to do is present the chief with a gift from the city. And so Chief, if you wouldn't mind coming up here. And knowing that the chief is a fairly avid bourbon drinker. There is, for those who can't see in the back, there is a map of Clive that is integrated on some coasters and a tray and also some glassware. And then of course a flag that has been flown over at CPSC in the chief's honor. So congratulations, Chief. Mayor and council, an opportunity. Of course, there'll be the public reception tomorrow, but this is the opportunity for the mayor and council to share their appreciation, and we'll go from there. And the chief, I'm sure, will have some words to say.
You want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay. Mayor and council, thank you so much for your support over my years here. With every challenge we faced, your support never wavered. However, you weren't afraid to ask us tough questions and hold us to a higher standard. You pushed us to be better, and it's been a great run, and looking back on it is very gratifying. But tonight, we're also looking to the future. I leave Clive Police Department in very capable hands. I've worked with Mark Rayberg my entire time here. I've seen him take on higher and higher levels of responsibility over the years. He's risen to the occasion for each new challenge before him, and I am confident he will lead the department with integrity and vision. Tonight, you're also going to see 3 other Clive police officers being promoted to higher levels of responsibility. It's gratifying to see our staff stepping up and taking on these roles. These 3 will be an integral part of Chief Rayberg's command staff. They will be there to support him and help him fulfill the mission of this department. At a city council meeting 12 years ago, I told City Manager Henderson, Mayor Cirksena, and the city council that I appreciated the opportunity to be their next police chief and that I would not let them down. I sincerely hope I fulfilled that promise. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Wait, Mike, we might have had questions. Anyone have any questions for?
Are you going to share some of that bourbon with the rest of us?
Of course.
No question, Chief. Really a great run for you with a lot of significant accomplishments.
Thank you.
I'm not going to run through everything, but it's a lengthy list. And you've always put your officers first and really ran a tight ship. So just want to publicly thank you for your efforts. And I know the citizens of Clive very much appreciate it as well.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I just want to echo Eric's comments. Really appreciate your leadership. You've done a tremendous job. You absolutely did not let us down from your initial comments, and
Thank you.
You're going to be missed. So very much thank you.
Thank you.
I will say your replacements say a lot about you, right? And your leadership in the department. And so you should be proud of that, that's your legacy. So
Thank you.
thank you.
All right.
I
Thank
like
you all.
the other comments, you know, I haven't been on the council as long, but even before the council, I've never questioned the safety in the community. I think a lot of that is because of your leadership and the rest of the Clive Police. But, you know, like you said, we ask the tough questions sometimes. You know, I know Flock was one of the first ones that we kind of worked through together as council, and, you know, your recommendation, and that recommendation means a lot because of what you've done. So
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
We just really appreciate the great job you've done, the leadership you provided, and we're eternally grateful for where you've positioned the department. So thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor.
Chief.
Next, we will recognize Roxanne Hunterdos. Roxanne has been our Human Resources Manager here in the city of Clive since July of 2016. Really great moment here. Roxanne is completing after 40 years of, the chief was in law enforcement for over 35 years. Roxanne's been in local government for over 40 years. So she had served as our first Human Resources Manager. That was a new position that was added with the city. She started her career in North Dakota and then made her way to Indianola before she joined us here in Clive. And so she's retiring after a long dedicated service to multiple communities, including the city of Clive. So we'd like to, Roxanne, recognize you. I think Liz is gonna give the gift from the city that we have for Roxanne that we hid very well. Roxanne just had her kitchen renovated, so we thought this would be a nice addition.
The colors of Clive.
To the colors of Clive. Glass blown piece from a local artist, so.
I think she wanted bourbon too.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You have to do a speech now because.
Roxanne's favorite thing.
No.
Perhaps you can drink your favorite beverage from your.
Oh, okay. Just thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to serve Clive. It's been a wonderful experience. It's been definitely a sweet adventure. And that's why you have your sweet treats as a momentum of the sweet adventure I've had with Clive. I know Matt worked hard to get this position with the city. He had to convince you as council members. I think it was 2 to 3 years it took to get the
Oh, it took longer
position.
than that.
Oh. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be the first human resource manager for the city of Clive. And I hope you have felt that it's been beneficial to the city, the organization, and the departments, and loved to have served I've loved who I've served with and who I've served for. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Roxanne. I'll see if other council members have remarks. Eric?
Roxanne, just since you've come aboard, I think it's really a tribute to your legacy of the consistency of our employees here at Clive and some of the changes you've helped to incorporate with whether it's web-based and the training. You know, we're very fortunate that our employees stay a long time. And I think really it's a tribute to you and your team and the folks you've done. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and I was part of that group that pushed back on, Denny was the one that originally brought it to us. And
Okay.
for a number of years, we were pushing back and, you know, we didn't see the value in it. You've proven the value. So thank you very much for that. And I think we're a much better organization because of what you've done.
Thank you.
Unlike Weaver, I was the dissenting vote or something because
I wasn't part of
but
that.
you can't
vote.
prove anything different. so.
I remember.
But I would have voted, you know,
There we go.
HR is sometimes,
Monday
you know,
morning
it's a
quarterback.
thankless role, right? If is, you know, it's one of those roles that is, if everything's going well, it's kind of invisible, right? But if it goes bad, oh man, it's bad, right? So I think that's a testament to how you ran it, that we didn't hear about any of those bad things, right? That it was smooth sailing for the most part.
Thanks to Matt. He's a good buffer.
I think I can say that this now that she's retiring, I can publicly say it, that you weren't just beneficial to the city and its citizens and employees, but there were many of days I gave Roxanne a phone call for my day job and asking her, what do I do here? What's going on? Right? As we weren't within HR for a while there. And so another organization that you that benefited from your time here quite a bit early on. I remember probably it was weekly. I was calling her for advice there for a while. So thank you for all that. Appreciate it. And she also is a quick study. This is what she's talking about on the sweet treats. The chief brought a small gift, which is a little backwards for us up here. And I said to Roxanne 2 weeks ago, what? You know, I thought you were gonna say- So Roxanne, I said to her, if you heard me earlier, I said, well played, because it's often, right? The last person that gives you that gift that we remember, right? But thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there's not much more to say. We're just so glad we had your services for the time you were here. You elevated HR to a new level for us and particularly in an inaugural position for us. So well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Now we have consent.
Move resolution.
So
Motion second on consent. Further discussion, being none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative. Next to the items everyone here has been waiting for, and that's our promotion. And Matt.
All right, Your Honor, I'll let you get in position for some oaths of offices that we're going to do for some police promotions. We're going to start off with Chief Rayberg. Chief Rayberg has served the city of Clive for 25 years. He is one of the few individuals, one of the only individuals that has served under every police chief the city of Clive has had up to this point. He will be the 4th police chief for the city of Clive. And we've talked a lot about Mark's path here at a previous council meeting, but now is the time to do the oath of office and then a lot of promotions following that. So, Your Honor, I will turn it over to you for
guys are in the
Chief
camera shot.
Rayberg's promotion.
Yep.
My notes say Rayberg, my notes say it's tonight in my notes, it says it's a roasting time too. And I don't know if Weaver wrote that or.
Okay, the difficult thing is first I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand. You can determine that. Good job. So far. I, Mark Rayberg,
I, Mark Rayberg,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all the duties of the office of police chief
discharge all the duties of the office of police chief
for the city of Clive,
for the city of Clive,
as now and hereafter required by law.
as now and hereafter required by law.
Congratulations.
Bad.
And I suppose you have someone to pin this on for you?
Keep it practicing. Remember, no pesticides.
Draw blood.
Oh, right into my chest.
One chance, you get away with anything you do here.
Yep. Yep, I don't want.
All right.
Very good.
All
Chief
right.
Rayburn.
Well, thank you, Mayor, councils, city manager. I'll tell you, you stole my thunder. I was gonna talk about the other chiefs that I had had the opportunity and privilege to work under. I've learned a lot from all of them. Great experiences from one and all. I have to thank Chief Vanema for the mentorship and the abilities and the opportunities that he has given me. I don't know that I would be here if it wasn't for him, so, yeah. I am looking forward to getting started. We got a lot of stuff that we're gonna keep doing. We're gonna keep building on what we have. You'll see behind me that the city's in good hands, so I appreciate the opportunity.
All right.
Chief.
Thank you. And as rare as it is for us to appoint a police chief, it's even more uncommon to promote as many people at one time as we are. So as my first official duty falls upon me, and that's a good one. So I'll take it. First promotion for you tonight is Damon Herzog's promotion to captain. Come up. Damon began his career with the Clive Police Department in 1997. He has served in uniform patrol, criminal investigations as a narcotics detective with the Mid-Iowa Narcotics Enforcement Task Force, and an operator on the Suburban Emergency Response Team. He has held positions of team leader and commander with the CERT, and as a sergeant, he served as a patrol supervisor and investigations commander. He most recently held the rank of police lieutenant, running the criminal investigation division. He holds a master's degree from Drake University and a bachelor's degree from Grandview University. He is a graduate of the 242nd session of the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia, and is also a United States Marine Corps veteran. He resides in Adel with his wife Rhonda and his children Nixon and Nelson. And where's the other one? There he is, Alex. Recently moved back from Texas. Damon
Nice.
Herzog,
All right.
Mayor.
Mayor.
So if you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Damon Herzog,
I, Damon Herzog,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all of the duties of the office of police captain
discharge all the duties of the office of police captain
for the city of Clive,
for the city of Clive,
as now and hereafter required by law.
for now and hereafter required by law.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you have a pinner?
My wife will do it.
Be careful.
Ow.
Probably put his best on. for this.
Very good.
Thank you.
Captain Herzog.
I could do one right now. since you brought that. All right. 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you.
From being promoted to lieutenant tonight is Adam Johnston. Adam was born and raised in Western Iowa. He graduated high school from West Monona High School in Ottawa. He then graduated from the University of Nebraska at Omaha with a bachelor's degree in aviation studies. After college, Adam worked as a park ranger for the Monona County Conservation Board. He graduated from the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy in April 2008 as part of the 220th Basic Training Class. Adam came to the Clive Police Department in May of 2014. After a short stint on patrol, Adam was assigned to the Mid-Iowa Narcotics Enforcement Task Force. He was promoted to sergeant in February of 2020 and has since supervised all 3 patrol shifts. Adam has completed the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Development Association Trilogy. He resides in Clive with his wife Jacqueline and their children, Tori and Grant.
You've been paying attention.
You don't have to be told.
I, Adam Johnston,
I, Adam Johnston,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa.
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
And I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all of the duties of the office of police lieutenant
discharge all of the duties of the office of police lieutenant
for the city of Clive
for the city of Clive,
as now and hereafter required by law.
as now and hereafter required by law.
Congratulations.
I'd like to see the little one do this.
Stab me in the neck.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Johnston.
And last, certainly not least, is Joe Nielsen, being promoted to sergeant. Up here, Joe. Joe joined the Clive Police Department in 2006. He has prior assignments in patrol, criminal investigations, and as the department's first school resource officer. Most recently, he has served as an officer in charge of a patrol shift. He also has prior assignments as a field training officer and a self-defense instructor. Joe holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in criminology from the University of Northern Iowa. Before joining the department, Sergeant Nielsen served 4 years with the Windsor Heights Police Department. Joe currently is assigned as a second watch shift supervisor. He resides in Norwalk with his wife Katie and his children Lance and Ella. He's also here with his father Terry, who retired from the Urbandale Police Department. Sergeant Nielsen.
I, Joe Nielsen,
I, Joe Nielsen,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
to support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and the Constitution of the State of Iowa,
and that I will faithfully and impartially,
and faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge all of the duties of the office of police sergeant
discharge all the abilities and duties of police sergeant
for the city of Clive
for the city of Clive,
as now and hereafter required by law.
for now and hereafter by required by law.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, Mayor Council, thank you. I know everybody appreciates these opportunities, so we won't let you down.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
And everyone present is welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you prefer to leave, we'll just pause for a couple of minutes and allow you to exit if you prefer to do so.
Okay. Fun meeting outside, yeah. Hey, Joe. Joe. Hey, congratulations, buddy. Happy for you.
Congratulations.
He was a great SRO.
So he was, so like I went to one of the, Swan School District SRO meetings. And it was that night of the storm, snowstorm. Snowed in.
Oh, is that right?
But otherwise, yeah.
All right, we'll
Kids all do it.
pick back up here with our public hearings and we'll check, did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor. Public notice was published in the Des Moines Register on July 8th, 2020.
Very good. Pete,
Thank you, Your Honor. It is my pleasure this evening to bring forward a proposal from staff to operate the 2024 Clive Soil Quality Restoration and Cost Share Program with our partners from last year, A+ Lawn and Landscape. They were the low bid. We received 2. They were substantially lower than the second bid, but given their track record last year working very well with us, we feel confident moving forward with them and are very certain that they're going to give a number of Clive residents a wonderful experience. Our goal is to achieve similar to results to what we did last year with about the same amount of compost and a goal of this about the same amount of square feet treated. With that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
any questions?
Pete, we have about 80 this year. Didn't we have like over 100 last year?
That was year 1.
That was your one.
Yep, 80,000 last year was about the square footage we were able to achieve. And all of this is driven by what we can achieve with our portion of the cost share. So each year, the water utility kicks in $45,000 to kind of bring the city's match to bear. So when we see a number that is around that $90,000 figure, we feel real good that we're going to be able to meet those types of goals.
And most of that, almost all that's residential, right? Is there any commercial in there?
100% residential.
No, that's fine.
Eric?
As we move forward this program, and we talked about this for years, now we're in the 3rd year of it.
Yep.
You know, this is key part of our water mitigation strategy and how we deal with excess water runoff. So looking forward to continue this program, especially how do we quantify the results on that? I know that's important to the council as well. So things have gone well, looking forward to continuing, but also always like to look for quantification of results of how the program's going.
Absolutely, Councilman. When we do in October, our annual sort of State of Clive water presentation, this will be the 2nd year that we've done that, giving everybody an update on our execution of the Water Resources Master Plan. We'll be able to bring forward those total numbers that we were able to treat and then look at 3 years worth of work on soil quality restoration and some of the city's projects and put a number to what we think we're doing to improve how we're handling runoff throughout the city. It will be incremental. We won't get this done just by treating yards for 3 years. But if we keep this going and we continue to have interest, then it's great that we've got partners who want to come alongside and help us get the work done.
It's a long-term project, and I think we all realize that.
Yeah.
I can tell you personally, my yard looks much better, and I don't have the pooling of water like I did before. So I've seen the results firsthand.
That's great. Really happy to hear that.
I agree, Eric, that those numbers are important, but I think it is difficult to show that quantitative number exactly to how it affects ours. Some of it's going to be that anecdotal and qualitative that you're seeing, but there are real numbers to back it up in science from universities. I think Purdue and Iowa State and some others have done those numbers. So we're going to have to kind of stretch those numbers into our area to get that quantitative and then really seeing that qualitative improvements from folks and the anecdotal stories and it does work, right? So appreciate you pushing forward and 80 is a big number. 100's a big number too, but 80, continuous 80 is a big deal.
Yeah, this year, I believe from talking with our partners at A+, there are only 2 communities that are sort of undertaking a broad SQR cost share program. Des Moines, the other one that's doing it. Some other cities have sort of been on and off. I really want to credit Julia McGuire, who works in our public works, but also helping out in ComDev. So this will be the second year that she's really run the show with giving all of the residents that really strong, good touch and helping them resolve issues if they come up, working very closely with A+. If we didn't have somebody as talented as her to help run this program, it would be more difficult to get it done. But she's really proven to be an incredible leader on this.
Other questions for Pete? Otherwise, we need to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second, close public hearing. Do we have anyone in the chamber who wishes to address the council on this matter? Seeing none, would council please vote, and will the clerk please post that vote? And our public hearing is closed.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Motion and second on the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And clerk posts that vote. That passes with 4 affirmative.
Move the receipt of bids.
Second.
Motion second, receive the bids. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative votes.
Move the resolution awarding contract to A+ Lawn and Landscape.
Motion is second on the resolution. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative votes as well.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Jim, tell us about Hickman Road.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. We're ready to assess final assessments on the Hickman Road and Northwest 161st Street intersection project. This phase 1 project installed the traffic signals at the intersection and made some median modifications on Hickman Road. As a reminder, this is the intersection with Fairway in the northeast quadrant and Quick Star in the southeast quadrant. The final construction costs came in slightly higher than those used in the preliminary assessment numbers. Those preliminary assessment numbers do set the ceiling for what we can assess, so those have been carried forward to the final assessment. One final note, when those preliminary assessment numbers were put together in early 2023, the Quick Start property had not changed hands yet, so there is a conditional deficiency based on the assessed value of that property at the time. 2 resolutions for your consideration tonight, one to accept the work and second to adopt the assessments. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jim?
Move the resolution accepting work covering the Hickman Road Northwest 164th Street intersection improvement project.
Second. Motion is second on resolution A. Further discussion. Seeing none, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative votes.
Move the resolution adopting final assessment schedule for the Hickman Road Northwest 161st Street intersection improvement project, amending, confirming, and levying the assessments.
Second. Motion is second on the resolution B. Further discussion. Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative votes as well. Matthew, tell us about this license renewal.
Thank you. Before you tonight is an application for a new liquor license for European Flavors, 1150 73rd Street in Clive. The reason this is out on the action item is because there's a recommendation from the fire and police department to deny this application due to an outstanding bootlegging charge and an unpaid fire reinspection fee. I'll take you back to October of 23, where this license was up for renewal. At that time, there was a recommendation from the fire marshal to deny, and that was based on fire code violations. And council ultimately voted to not renew this license. The applicant then appealed the decision to the ABD, and the matter went before an administrative law judge who upheld the council's decision to not renew that license. So upon the decision from the ALJ, European Flavors did no longer have a liquor license, but unfortunately was found to be continuing to sell alcohol, which is what brought about the bootlegging charge. Regarding the original fire code violations that existed previously, those have actually all been rectified. and are in good standing. However, with the outstanding bootlegging charge and the outstanding fire reinspection fees, staff's recommendation is to not allow this license to go forward. Outlined in your memo is the chapters of Iowa code that allow you to deny a liquor license based on outstanding fees. I think it's pretty straightforward. However, I would, speaking on behalf of the fire and police department, if these matters were rectified, I think their recommendation would change to approve. But as things stand right now, it is a recommendation to denial. And the owner is here tonight if you have any questions for him or police chief, fire marshal, or myself.
Very good questions for, go ahead.
Matthew, is there some timing urgency with this, where a decision has to be made today, or can it be delayed until after this August 13th, 14th trial?
The application actually came in weeks ago to be put on a previous agenda, and we booted it to this one, and it was at his direction that we put it on tonight's agenda. I think the urgency is he wants to get a liquor license so that he can start operating again and possibly take care of these fees.
So I get that. I guess my counter to that would be, then there was a prior, trial or whatever you call it, opportunity for him to have had that looked at, and he didn't show up for that. So I guess in my mind, at least, and I'm certainly happy to hear from the applicant, the urgency for us isn't necessarily there because he has deferred this on his own, is the way I see it. So happy to hear from the applicant, but.
Any other
Would you-
questions for Matthew at this point? If the applicant would like to,
I get to speak for myself, yeah.
Right up.
You have questions addressed to me. And reason I came today to ask respectful counsel to give me this license, because without generate any profit or generate any revenue, how I can pay fine? Business not doing good, business dying, and without license, it's take even half of the profit what I already losing. And this court date, it was misunderstanding simply. I planning to come. When judge hand me the paper, he said, I'm sorry, maybe it's my broken English. He said 7:10 and I hear 17. And I planning to come 17 and I miss the date. So I redo the date, but I play not guilty and I will play not guilty because I didn't feel I am guilty.
Oh, can I interrupt real quick? The
Sure.
date he's talking about is the original bootlegging charge. There was a hearing that was set up on July 10th.
Correct.
And he did not show up for that hearing because of a miscommunication. So that's the date that we're referring to right now, not the council meeting when you denied the renewal.
No, I get
Okay.
that. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure that was clear.
Eric,
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
So you've been a Clive business for how long? It's been some time.
I'm in Clive business already in, I built this building what is on corner of 73rd and University in 2000. 2001, I move in. From 2001, I have this license. 24 years, I never have a problem. Fire marshal changed. He need new rules. And he started following on this rule so hardly on me. What is, no sense. No way you can fix this problem for 2 weeks. I chasing these contractors and begging them to come back. They don't want to do it. First one, they too expensive, they too busy. What I can say, I cannot do it myself. And I promised him, and I told him I'm gonna commit. And he gave me paper on a list of contractors, what I calling them. He still come back and give me fine charges. And what I can say, I don't planning to pay these charges because I didn't, it's not fair to give it to me because I told him I'm gonna fix it. And I did fix it, and he never show up to check at me. Never show up after charges. He never come to inspect me when I done. Maybe it's my fault. I should call him and invite him. But after we have first hearing in the court, we have like phone hearing. Be honest with you, I don't want to even talk to him because he put so many things what is not true. I was mad. But
I am curious. So
Srikant.
how much time did you have from the original inspection, fire marshal inspection, how much time did they give you? To
He actually gave me 2 weeks, but he didn't show up in 2 weeks. I understand it's 2 weeks, but originally it's probably was my fault because I told him I don't want to even do it. Because in my opinion, it's things what is, I understand it's code and I respect it. And I know, I understand it's rule, but it's rule for not everybody. Older building don't have this equipment. And they find this fire marshal. They just don't have it because it's old construction. New construction have to have this monitoring, fire monitoring. In my opinion, what for? At night, when they give me a call, I have fire on my premises. It's no sense. And it's cost me $55 a month right now. And it's cost me $900 what I already spent on this equipment, what is have to be installed. And I did, I complied, I did everything.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I have some follow-ups to Shrikant's question. The one thing I do believe is that our fire chief and our police chief are very reasonable. And I think that tone has been set by this council to be reasonable. And I think those are the humans we bring.
They have reason, but I can argue, I'm sorry, chief recommendation, because if I play guilty and come back next meeting like a criminal to you, because on me, it's gonna be already charges and I'm gonna be convicted on bootlegging.
But my question is this, it sounds like you're putting it on the fire marshal of what happened. And from what I've been briefed on in the past and briefed on this week, as well as what I've read, the fire marshal, you should thank for not coming back in 2 weeks because you weren't ready in 2 weeks. And so if he came back in 2 weeks, you weren't going to be ready and he was going to write you a fine anyways. Second, my understanding is he's come multiple times to your facility. And yes, indeed, you told him directly you were not going to fix these items. That's concerning that when you tell, there are rules set, you can not like them. There are plenty of rules that this council has set that I don't like. And they've heard about those. The fire marshal put in these new windows. I'm not going to get into that, but I didn't like it. But I can't just say, I am not going to follow these rules. You don't have that option. And so that's my concern. Sir, my concern is this, is your total disregard to the rules that are put in place for you to do business in the city. And the total disregard has been a decision-making factor in my past decisions on not to give liquor license. And so that's my main concern. I'm not sure how we get over that hurdle.
Okay, I tried to explain myself. I was under impression when he came and tried to rule me to do this, not inspection. I was provide him any inspection, what he have to be done, you know, but I told him my opinion. I don't have this monitoring 18 years. 18 years, I don't have it.
I've been in the city 20 years.
18 years, I don't have it.
And I haven't had this new window rule, and I do now. That's just the rules, right? That the majority make and the majority have to then follow.
And I admit, I tell him I am not gonna do it. I tell him from my expression. And he talked to me and I told him I'm gonna comply. And I did comply.
How long did it take you to comply after your first initial discussion with him?
4 months.
4 months.
4 months, but it's not my fault to comply in 4 months because try to do, okay. I cannot install this equipment by myself. I cannot do inspection on the fire sprinkler by myself. I have to hire somebody. And if they're busy, and I have contract with Summit sprinkle system company. They didn't show up. They didn't show up. Promised me and didn't show up.
Was that communicated to the fire marshal at any time?
Yes, and he told me, Alex, it's gonna cost you money to waiting for them. Find somebody else. And I get his recommendation, started find somebody else. And you think they come next day when you call them? Or next week when you call them? They come after 1 month or 2 months. They did, and I complied. And I pay for this inspection and it's done. But I cannot do it myself. I cannot do it in 2 weeks. No way.
So I think we're getting bogged down in the minutia here. I mean, Matthew said, if you met and complied with all of our regulations, paid all the restitution, that their recommendation would change to approval. I am fully willing to get behind that recommendation, assuming, number one, you take care of all the restitution that's required, whether you liked it or not, like what Mike said, the rules are the rules and you have to follow them. So if you're willing to do that, and again, in my opinion, the urgency here is on you, not necessarily us. We have this rescheduled appeal or trial, I don't know what exactly it is, on August 14th. Whatever the results of that are, as long as you follow those results and pay the restitution, I would be willing to approve that. I'm not willing to do it tonight. I'm just not there.
It's your opinion.
That would be my suggestion.
See,
May I ask Matthew a clarifying question? If that all happens, is it out of our hands at this time now that the state made a ruling to not give a liquor license or not to?
So with regard to the
Appeal.
original renewal that was denied.
Yeah.
That does not hold the same weight as a revocation. It's completely different.
I see. Oh, I remember
So
that.
with a
discussion.
revocation, you cannot reapply for a license.
see.
But with a denial of a renewal, he's free to apply for
I
a new
remember that.
license.
Okay.
Even if you deny this renewal tonight, following the court hearing that he'll have in a few weeks, he could reapply.
Huh.
Pending that restitution.
Can you
To
let,
Councilmember Weaver's point, if that's.
let me
desired.
ask the applicant real quick, can you get this taken care of by August 14th? Because we want to work with you. We want to work with business. The question to you is you have to comply with the rules. If you can get this taken care of by August 14th,
take,
restitution and
take
the
care of
fines,
what?
we can move forward.
take care of what? Go on the court? Yes, I will go on the court and I'm planning to go. I'm not gonna hide or run. And missing first hearing, it was just misunderstanding the date. I planning to come, but I planning.
Let's move forward from
Okay.
that. If you can take care of the fines and
I
Well, then
can,
what
I
are the
can
charges?
take care of the
Whatever
fines.
court
I don't
is-
have no money and I live from revenue from my business. I can show you my bank account. It's bounced, it's minus. How I can write him and check what is minus? How,
Well, I think that's a holdup.
if,
You know,
I respect your decision. I mean, I asking you to hear my story and that's it. You decided vote, didn't give me this license. You put my business to the ground. I shut the door, walk away crying in my corner after 28 years in the business. And that's all. I can't pay. I can't. Because 10 years ago, $7 fine, it's like 70,000 right now for me.
Yeah, but you can't put that responsibility on us that we're closing them down.
I understand. I understand. I just try to tell my story.
Get it?
And
Matthew, could you clarify, he was selling alcohol without a license, the license?
That is the.
it was misunderstanding because I think I selling alcohol under appeal because I never got the court documents to my office. It was sent to email my wife, personal email, when she never opened it, and I sell the alcohol. I admit I did. I admit, but it was not understanding. I think I doing right thing. And when police come, first time, they come twice. They come first time and he told me, you cannot sell alcohol what you're making in the store. And I tell him, I don't make any alcohol in the store. I sell alcohol, what I have license for wine, that's it. He walk away. Didn't say me anything. Next week he come back and write the invitation to the court. And this is how I find out. He told me, you don't have license. And this day I called to the Matthew and he sent me all these court papers to email to me. This is how I find out. And immediately I put line out of service. And from this day, I didn't sell alcohol because it was, I admit I sold alcohol, but I think I sell under appealing documents, what attorney appealed to the court.
Well, just reading the council here, I don't think there are votes here tonight to approve a license renewal with the bootleg issue pending. I do think, if I read the council correctly, they're willing to defer consideration until after the 14th. And if that's resolved, then there's a higher likelihood of approving. Is that the sense
That's
I'm
where I'm
hearing?
at.
So
I-
if that is,
I did have one question for Matthew, maybe, on the reinspection fees that are outstanding, right, the 700. Do we have any precedent or have we worked with other, owners or anything on like getting a payment? I don't know. Payment
That
plan,
might
I
be
was
AOA,
thinking the same
whatever.
thing. We
Yeah.
structure a payment at
Yeah.
$50 a month or whatever it is. to-
Right.
to
Have
work
we
with
done
you
that
on
in the
this.
past or?
That's been a function of the fire department. I don't know
okay.
if Clay would like to speak to that.
Mayor, council, to my knowledge, we've never done that. Again, and as my tenure as the fire marshal till now, we've never racked up this many inspection fees and reinspection fees. If that's an option, I'm completely for it. The owner of the property has done everything to put the building back up to code. It did take quite a bit of time to get there, but as it sits today from a fire safety standpoint, it does meet all the codes in front of us.
How many inspections was that, chief?
Multiple. The very first one is set for 1 month. And we do that for a reason. As the applicant did state, they can't always come out the day after. However, we do have a very close working relationship with the majority of the contracts in the metro that do this work. And I can't speak for this situation, but I do know in ones in the past, they'll send me an email saying, I have them on the books. I'll be there in a week. But to my knowledge, that did not take place for quite some time.
any other questions for Clay?
Could we structure something so that, we're not putting them out of business, but we are getting the restitution owed to us?
I am completely open for that.
Yeah.
Again, I, at no point, we love working with them. We want businesses to stay in business. We want them to be safe as well. So we have met all that criteria. If a payment plan, a structure is created, I am completely for it. Again, I'm with him. That puts him in a tough spot as we sit today. And if that's an option, set forth, I completely support that.
And as long as the applicant is willing to pay the fees, as you've heard tonight, he's not willing to do so. So you'd have to have some affirmative that he's willing to pay the fees, even if it's over a time period.
Let's ask the applicant to address that.
I denied pay fee on before I get the license because I don't have it right. I can't. I show you my account balance. Wait, if I close the door, I go on unemployment.
Just to be clear, though, if we were to go the way we're talking here, right? If after your court date, we can put you on a payment plan or some sort of agreement where
Right.
you're making it.
I can do it on payment plan, yes, but I have to be operatable. Because it's when business operated, it's not big amount to pay. I spend twice more on fix this problem in the promises.
Well, I think the first issue before us is the license renewal and whether we're going to take any action on that.
I would move to table that to a future council meeting until after his court date on August 14th.
Second.
See, last memo, I said, this is Mr. Minion crime, Mr. Minion, I don't know what this mean, but yeah, Mr. Minion, Mr. Miner. It's only $104 fine or $150 fine. I can pay and play guilty, but I worry about if I play guilty and come back to this council meeting, I will be already accused in crime, what I already agree and commit. And then recommendation will be not give him a criminal, don't give him no more license.
Let's ask,
And this is why I scared of.
let's ask the chief what his recommendation would be.
So we've been discussing this issue with Matthew Graham, and at least my opinion is that if he takes care of the criminal charge based on his history, my recommendation would be that the council approve. After July 1st, there will be, or August 1st, there'll be a different chief in place. I can't speak for him, but I think we've had the same thoughts in mind as we're going forward. So I don't think that would be a hurdle if he were to take care of that court, whether it's by a plea agreement or whatever.
Chief, would it be fair to say in our history, we've focused more if they're felony charges versus this would be a misdemeanor?
Yes,
charge?
a simple misdemeanor, if it's taken care of, and based on his history, I would be willing to recommend approval. And that's the discussion we had before this date. It's unfortunate that he didn't have his court date back on July 10th. We would have had that in the books. Matthew Graham was there, I was there. But we've got that bumped back to August 14th now.
And really, it cannot be resolved as far as the bootlegging until the 14th. There's not a way to.
That's,
So
that's.
we're stuck with that date.
Court date.
If he were to, his
plead-
attorney were
plead
to
guilty.
approach our legal counsel ahead of time, but I don't know if they can take care of it before the court date.
They can, because the recommendation of my attorney was, you find out what council meeting thinks first, and then we decided what you play guilty, it's can be done next day. I can call to my attorney and change my mind and play guilty and pay the fine, and court documents will be fixed. Or I have to go to trial and take everybody time and wait for court decision.
So I would suggest getting that resolved and then talking to our staff about setting up a plan, a payment plan for your restitution. And then I think this council will be very open to rehearing you and approving that.
So we did not have a second on that motion. I'm wondering if you would amend that to table it until our August 8th meeting. We
August
can
8th.
always defer it after that.
So amended.
Second.
We have a motion second, Matt.
I just want to make sure, Alexander, you understand what's before the council. So they're going to be voting on tabling the decision on the renewal to the August 8th meeting for the new license, excuse me, for a new license, pending what your decision is with
So
your
I have to
attorney.
reapply because this license.
No, you
cannot
do
be
not.
applied.
No, you do not.
But you
This
cannot
is-
sell.
But
I know
that's-
I'm not sell, I
but
can
you-
show you how it's,
Yes, but you
I
cannot
think so,
sell
yeah.
until then.
I know, I can
That-
sell from May
right.
30th. or-
That if you work with your attorney and our prosecutor on, if you're, going to consider to plead guilty to that charge, you heard the police chief state, that the police department will not recommend against if you resolve the bootlegging
The
charge. and-
recommendation from my attorney was we have to go to court, because if you're gonna play guilty and they put charges on you already immediately, and you come back to council meeting accused in this crime, they can on experience what you have, or not experience, on what you have.
But I think
What
what
you're
we're
hearing
They're
from
gonna
this
deny you
council,
Because you already have these criminal charges on you.
what you're hearing from this council is, and from our police department, or at least from our police department, I want to speak for the council, is that with it only being a misdemeanor charge and not something higher than that, that even if you pled guilty to that, that that would not be held against you in terms of the recommendation for a new liquor license.
Yeah, I understand.
But that does not resolve the reinspection fees on the fire department that at least I'm taking council's direction here, that their desire is for us to work with you to come up with a payment plan over a certain time period, that you would be paying the fees in total, but it would be over a number of months post your liquor license being approved. Again, I don't want to speak for the council, but hopefully I'm repeating this correctly. But that they're not going to do anything tonight because you still have to make the decision on the bootlegging charge.
Yeah,
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I get it.
Am I representing your honor?
You
But
got
I can pay my bill too. I have suggestion. You give me offer once for water. I can use this money.
So I will make the council aware of this. So Alexander has a credit on his utility bill.
Big one.
A big one, because he had 2 utility meters and then the stormwater charge was getting doubled up accidentally on his utility bill. So one of the refunds that I've shared with the council that we had addressed on some of the commercial properties, Alexander's was one of them. So he does have a credit in his utility account that we owe him for stormwater fees that he's paid in excess over the last few years. An option on a payment plan could be is we use a
You can
portion of
use
that
this money.
credit for the
You
payment.
can use this money. It's It's
Can you
on,
do that from an accounting standpoint? Because since they're different
Yes,
funds?
we can make that work.
Okay.
They would be from different funds.
and I don't have no problem, and I don't have no plans, and I am clear. Right now, I cannot write the check. The check gonna be bounced. But
I'd be
I just
fine with that.
mentioned-
I think that's a good
Absolutely.
resolution.
We could resolve the payment side. I still think it's just a question on whether he's going to fight the bootlegging charge that I would,
I'm not
I
gonna
would-
fight then. I get it.
I agree with you. But I need to see that and our prosecutor needs to see that. If that is the case, then what the council could do is table it to August 8th, which is our next council meeting, to consider the license. And in the meantime, you can make your decision on the bootlegging charge and we can come up with the resolution to the fees based on his utility credit he has outstanding.
So we do have a motion and a second to take that action to table
Okay.
this to,
So City of Clive owe me much more money than I owe to City of Clive for my.
Well, that's good
And
to
we
know.
offered-
That's good to know. I
And
mean,
we
that's-
It's a
offered,
joke, it's a joke.
and
But
we
it's
did
good to know.
offer for the council
like
to
that.
know, we did offer to write him a check in full and he chose to keep it in his utility account.
Yeah.
Just the credit in his utility account. That was offered to
Good.
him.
That'll help offset
okay.
it.
We have a
I
motion and a
just
second.
get this idea to clear my problem immediately because Matt City of manager of City of Clive, he offered me, we can write you a check back this credit.
Yeah.
And because it was applied right now to my utilities and I don't pay utility bill for water, it just roll over on this credit.
I have one
Anyway, we have a motion and a second.
I have one last question for the fire chief. Who we have, the police chief has agreed. The fire department's been the one that's
Favorite.
been affected by this the most. And the reinspection, we talk about this every year about the cost to the city, about inspections, right? And those are real dollars. Do you feel comfortable moving forward with this resolution? You're gonna have to start working with the fire department.
I always work with fire department. I
Well,
wasn't.
Let's not rehash that, but
Any part of me,
yeah, let's not rehash that, but I think there's proof that 3-4 months we had problems or longer. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. We want the occupant to reopen. And again, he has made some pretty significant steps in getting it up to code. So whatever plan we can work out,
Okay.
I'm more than happy to sign off on that.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Any further
Wait.
discussion? Hearing none, will the council please vote?
Just to table.
And this is the table,
Table to August 8th.
August 8th. And will clerk please post that vote? And that passes with 4 affirmative votes, so hopefully you can get everything taken care of in the next couple of weeks.
Yep.
All right, next we have Pete up talking about our outstanding Clive resident survey.
Thank you, Your Honor. One moment. Yep. So, Your Honor, Council, this is one of my favorite presentations to be part of, one of my favorite discussions to be part of with all of you, because we get a chance to hear directly from your constituents, from the residents of Clive, on a host of things that are important to them when it comes to livability. What the the report on our survey for the last 2 years has been organized around this concept of facets of livability. And they are interrelated to each other, and they are all to an important level, to a significant level, important in the eyes of residents. We see that in the results, but some tend to be a little bit more important than others. And when we have a chance then to grade our own performance as a city against the relative importance that our residents put on that performance, this ends up being very, very actionable information. So I've got a number of slides. Please stop me as we're going through so we can look at the data even more carefully. And I'll also be able to pull up our crosstab tool, which is a new addition to the survey this year compared to the last, where we can very quickly see differences across different demographics in the city. First slide is outlining methods. I won't go over all of this. Probably the most important thing to know is that our response rate this year was 15%. And for the last 3 times we've done the survey, that response rate has been decreasing. Good news, though, is that even with the decrease, we have been increasing the number of folks that we've been mailing to every year. This year, we've sent out to 3,000 randomly selected Clive households. Those are both attached and detached households. So we're getting a good mix and good representation of the different types of housing in the city. We still ended up with enough of a response rate across all 7 planning districts that we don't have to combine any of them to come up with statistically significant results. So 1 through 7, just like we did in 2022, that's what we've got here in 2024.
Hey, Pete.
Yes, sir.
On those households that we're hitting, do we know how many or what the percentage of repeat households we're hitting from one year to another? Or maybe not necessarily consecutively, but even within the last 6 years or 8, because I mean, we don't have that many households in Clive, right? So, I mean, we must be hitting some of them multiple times. And I wonder if that's contributing to,
Positive results.
well, or the negative response rate.
Or the negative response rate. I'll ask that question. That's a very good question. I've not asked our survey partners that before. When I have asked them just nationally among other cities, what they're seeing survey fatigue. So a number of folks who are just saying, I don't want to fill out one more survey, be asked about one more set of things. And it's a pretty comprehensive survey we're sending. We're asking well over 100 questions. So it's a time commitment we're asking folks to make when they respond.
It is. And I'm just wondering if, like, when we look at that, if, you know, how, are there many or how many households have we not hit at all? You know, and maybe there's some level where, so we just figure out some way to vary that up a bit, you know, I don't know, but.
Yep. I can follow up with that question.
Still an impressive number, you know, I've always been under the understanding of 10, 11% is a pretty darn good response rate on a survey, a random survey like this.
I have based on the survey methodology and the past work we've done with the Pulco NCS team, I've had a high degree of confidence that we've got something here that's real signal and not just noise. But making sure we always have a representative cross-section of the community, that's the starting point. If we lose or backslide on any methodology here, then we're going to have a lot less confidence in these types of results.
That's an interesting question though, Ted, because I'm not sure I've ever received.
Right. That's what I mean.
Hard.
Whereas I think
I've received 2.
I was gonna say, I think my household's gotten it twice.
Yeah.
Got it once.
So just curious. I mean, I think that would be interesting information.
Right. Sort of setting the history for our historical context. For some of these questions now, this is the 10th year that we've asked to have done the survey 5 times over the course of a decade. And now in a 10-year span, we've been coming back to these questions.
Right.
It's getting some really interesting trend lines. These are our planning districts. We just covered that. And here we get to see a comparison between 2022 and 2024. Where do residents think the most resources or the most attention should be put to deliver the services and infrastructure that they think is most important? Across the x-axis there, you've got the level of importance that residents place on the facets of livability. And on the y-axis, you see their grading of the city on how well we deliver on those facets of livability. Just as we saw in 2022, that same cluster of 5 is up in that top right-hand corner where you have high importance and high quality. That's what we want to see. Good consistency about the city meeting that high bar that the residents set for us on the things that they believe are most important. Now, you'll note that from year to year, the median is going to change for both equality a little bit and for importance, but there hasn't been a huge swing there compared to the previous survey. Here's another way for us to look at it, where on the left you see quality, and they were reporting on the percent of respondents who said that our performance was good or excellent. And then on the right-hand side, you see the percent who said it was important or very important. To get a better sense of what that gap looks like, though, this chart kind of shows us where are those splits. Now, ideally, I would love to see quality always exceeding importance, but the fact that they are all still clustered in a pretty good range gives me a good sense that the level of sort of attention and spending that you all are advancing through your various policies and your direction to staff seems to be proportional with what residents are expecting. Now, before we jump into other big numbers, we need to talk a little bit about statistical significance and about what some of these national benchmark numbers mean. When comparing 2022 to 2024, if a result is plus or minus 6 or greater than 6%, 6 or more, then it is considered statistically significant when we're comparing the 2 survey years. When we're looking for statistical significance within just the 2024 survey across different demographic groups, it varies quite a bit based on what kind of response we received from people in those different demographic groups. Does that make sense for what we're looking for as we get ready to dive into some specific results? Okay. So this, I believe, is probably the most important headline to take from the entire survey. For a decade now, residents have consistently said that Clive has extremely high marks for quality of life. You can see Clive is a place to live and the overall quality of life. We far exceed the national benchmark. Now, to be higher than the national benchmark, it means that we are at least 10 points better than the benchmark. To be much higher, it means we are 20 points better than the national benchmark, at least. It could be even more than that, too. Does that make sense when we're looking at the higher and lower? Same thing for lower and much lower. Lower would be 10, much lower would be a 20 point difference. Here are a couple other indicators of how people feel about quality of life in Clive that I've pulled from other parts of the survey. Clive is a place to raise children, 93% higher. Place to retire continues to be higher. These are all results that are statistically almost identical to what we've seen for years in the city of Clive. Making all residents feel welcome. This is a question we only started asking in 2020. I'm very happy to see that that number has remained statistically the same and higher than the national benchmark. And the neighborliness of residents. Here's one where we do see a statistically significant bump from last year and a welcome one. All indicators, though, of quality of life and the way residents feel about living in the city of Clive. This is one I think that all of you should be especially proud of as well. So you've heard me talk in the past about one of those problems that are sort of a macro problem that we're facing and other public institutions are facing across the country. It's this erosion of trust in public institutions. And in many ways, sort of a leaking that's happening from national levels of politics all the way down to the municipal level. And we've watched these results here on these questions around governance very, very carefully to see if we're starting to see some of that softening or eroding. In fact, last year, I suggested that those macro trends were leading to a little bit of softening on this point. Well, this year, I'm happy to report that I see a lot more bounce back and I see enormous resilience in this institution, at least from the perspective of residents. They give you all some of the very highest marks they possibly could relative to benchmark and also relative to our past performance on being honest, on being fair, on being providing great public information services, the overall direction that Clive is taking. I've put those numbers there in red to show you what the rank was against all the other communities that have asked this question in the last 5 years, and you all are knocking it out of the park.
I know you've told us this in the past, but can you just give us a brief description of the other communities that like are in the comparison here?
Wide range. So you'll have some that are much larger than Clive, some that are smaller. You'll have a handful that are still here in the state of Iowa that are using it. It's never, I don't think, been more than about 10 or 15 other peer communities in Iowa that have used it. But it gives you a representation of communities that are on the coast and also in the Midwest. They tend to be a little more clustered here in the Midwest.
Thank you.
There are even more that I could have put on this slide, but I ran out of real estate.
That's a I know a slide that I'm proud of as well in terms of just how our residents feel, particularly about overall confidence in city government. To have the highest ranking out of at least the 330 cities that asked that question that use this survey tool.
I mean, that being honest and transparent, that's pretty good too.
Those, yeah, a lot of number ones there that it's pretty awesome, and that many in the top 5, top 10.
Yeah. 2 more that I didn't have room to put on here. One was being fair to all residents. That's a top 5 result, and also treating residents with respect. It's another top 5 result. So here, when you're asked about the overall confidence that residents have in the city government, I'm comparing 2022 to 2024. Love to see that group giving us the excellent rating increasing. Love to see the good hanging in there as well. All that means is that the folks who graded us fair or poor is as much as a smaller share of the pie than it was in 2022. So this is trending in a positive direction for us.
I do think, I mean, I'm, not statistically significant, but I do think it's worth mentioning the people that are unhappy, they're no longer just kind of ambivalent fair. Some of those have moved into that poor portion. A lot of them moved into the good or excellent as well, but just something to note.
So right up there with the quality of governance and the trust that people have when it comes to things that people value in Clive as a facet of livability, overall economic health is right up there at the top. The more time I spend with the data, though, the more I realize that these questions around economic health are so interrelated with all the other services that we provide. If you, for example, don't feel safe in your business district or safe in your neighborhood, your overall sense of well-being or an overall sense of sort of economic opportunity and what's out there in your future, it's going to take a hit. So all of these things, when we think about the overall economic well-being, I think are a reflection also of a lot of the other services and infrastructure that we're providing. Now, that said, when you look at something like sort of economic development, we don't define that term for folks when they answer the question. They could be indexing really on what their economic sentiment is. How are things going for their business? How are things going for their household? But I do think there's some signal here when people are thinking specifically about Clive. How is that economic environment right now in Clive? And residents are saying and have consistently said that it's extremely good. Economic development, we're 10 out of 332. We are at statistically identical to where we were the previous year, and a slight increasing trend over time from 2014. Cost of living, in a point at a time when we're talking about lingering inflation and the pressure on pocketbooks for businesses and for households, it's really encouraging to see folks report that cost of living in Clive, as they experience, is a real positive, that it's good or excellent compared to other places where they may choose to live. This, I think, is a real mark of the resilience of Clive, because we know this isn't the experience that we're seeing in a number of other parts of the country. Land use and planning, a shout out to the choices that you all have made with our community development department, making good choices about where things are going to be located, how they're going to live well next to each other, how new neighborhoods are going to be developed. This is I look at this question and I see a whole set of questions about economic development and residents saying, wow, you all, City of Clive, you're doing this the right way.
You know, I would like, and I know you're going to dive into these, not tonight, but further and dissect it, but the cost of living, the overall economic health piece, you see a 7% drop. Yes, over the benchmark, we're better, right? But that's a big number, and that's a significant number, right? It's 6, right? From 2020 to.
So from 2022 to 24, that would be a statistically significant drop from 92 to 83.
And then you look at cost of living as well. That's significant. But it would be interesting. So the 2 out of 327 to Shrikant's question, it would be interesting later to see who those are, to pull out the East Coast, West Coast, whatever, to see what the Midwest is. I do think that Clive and others in this area are fairly insulated to national recessions, national housing problems. I mean, it comes a little bit later, and that's anecdotal. And so I'd like to see if that's real.
I'll see if
these are things we need to track if they're real.
I'll see if they can give us sort of a regional breakdown on that, or peer states. So we get rid of some of the other states that don't look exactly maybe like Iowa from geography or other factors.
Doesn't mean we don't need to react, but.
Yep. I do absolutely agree with your point that economic trends, oftentimes cultural trends too, the Midwest tends to be a little bit lagging compared to other parts of the country. And so the more acute pain that other parts of the country might be feeling or might have felt on some of these issues might still be coming at us. I will say, though, that when we asked about the question about what do you expect the economy to do for you in this coming year versus last year, in 2022, it was pretty sour still, and people were expecting a real sharp recession potentially. Now, here we are in 2024, and what was projected to be a really painful period of economic stress hasn't exactly materialized that way, though the inflation still is a serious issue.
Well, and
That's just because you're not a realtor, but that's.
well, and that's, that's one thing that you've kind of alluded to it already, right? That overall economic health and even the cost of living, we obviously have a part to play in that, but there are other factors that I think people are thinking about that we don't necessarily have a part in, right? I'm not saying that's a scapegoat way of saying it doesn't matter, but I think that's something to keep in mind is, you know, if somebody that's filling out, you know, this survey, you know, they feel like, hey, the economy's not doing anything for me. And when they think of the economy, they're thinking of the broader, you know, macroeconomic environment. That's a difficult thing to quantitatively
Right.
qualify.
I try and balance that out by really digging in on the American Community Survey. It's done every 2 years, and see what those results kind of tell us about the state of Iowa or some of our census districts as well. Try and compare that to what we see when we survey as well, just to keep a feel for the pulse of the community. But I will say that there are some very strong signals just in this data that we're going to get to later on in the survey that show how household income affects your perception of all types of things that are happening in the city of Clive. Again, more information about the sort of overall positive sentiment that residents have about economic development activity in Clive and overall economic health. Here's some numbers, though, that, given all the headlines we've seen nationally about housing, that sort of struck us as puzzling. Some that are going to need a whole lot more analysis to make sense of it. To have this much resilience on this question of availability of affordable quality housing, to see it even bump up, though not in a statistically significant way from the previous numbers, still low compared to where we were earlier on in the decades. But these are numbers that are showing, I think, quite a bit of resilience, or showing us that relative to the rest of the country, the acuteness of the housing pain here is potentially a little bit less. But I defer to the experts on that.
Well, the latter is more of the answer. Yeah.
That the highs and lows here are just a little bit less than the highs and lows other places. Yeah. The housing discussion is going to be right in front of us. We're hearing it from the legislature. We're hearing it from local partners as well. You all have talked about it with an eye to some specific Clive neighborhoods where housing stock is reaching that 50, 60-year-old point. When we saw this, we were expecting maybe to see a little less confidence in the housing questions, but by and large, this is still relatively positive among Clive residents.
You know, we may see a sharper drop off when we're, you know, kind of at that more fully built out, right? We've still got a few development opportunities left that might, you know, people might be thinking, oh, well, I can still go to lot on the other side of town if I want, right?
So possibly.
Part of one thing that I thought about on this question too is we don't survey the people who don't live in Clive currently, right? How would they answer?
Sure.
And obviously, Councilmember Weaver's your experience as a realtor, that's in terms of the availability of people to be able to purchase a home in Clive. Of course, we don't always have a lot of listings of existing housing stock. We're probably more limited, some of our neighboring communities, by the nature of people are fairly happy here and not necessarily selling their houses often in Clive neighborhoods, but I don't know how that factors in. Of course, we don't survey those folks to be able to answer this question, but.
Yeah.
Clive's still very much considered a very high-end market.
Yep. I think a median price for housing in Clive now is right at about the national median price as well, which is unusual because our housing costs here in Iowa generally would be lower than national.
Lower.
But yet we have, a lot of affordable housing and workforce housing areas too in the community. They're just now being outweighed by what's being developed further out west.
I'm going to move through these a little bit faster not because they are unimportant. They are extremely important, but it's just remarkable how steady the results there have been on public safety. Priority number one for their city is to make sure that your neighborhoods and your commercial districts remain places where people feel safe from property crime, violent crime, natural disasters, you name it. Those have been remarkably consistent results from our public safety teams. Similar with our utility services, they have over time been extremely positive. One that I want to call out because I know it was a interesting conversation last time we looked at this survey data and when we were working with MetroNet, soon to be maybe renamed to another company's name. But there was a huge spike in people's perception of affordable high-speed internet access in Clive, which is a real positive.
I think this is a testament to people seeing this as a core utility, right? Is seeing this as a core service that, you know, they need or they expect.
Yeah. One other.
I see the garbage collection has gone down.
Not
Very-
significant.
The only one that's, similar and not higher. Is any rationale or anything beyond that?
Similar only meaning that it's less than 10% better than the national benchmark. So it's in
So
that
other words,
range.
It's average.
In other words, it's better, just less than 10% better, but it's better.
Sounds like some wordsmithing.
It sounds like a good conversation for the council to have.
One thing that's interesting on utilities, though, if you go back to one of the earlier slides, is how much our residents feel it's important. And in terms of where they view the quality of the service, still high, but that the level of importance of utilities, that's one of those, when you look at, even in the report, there's the chart, it shows of areas. If you get into these other boxes, upper left and lower right, you're either over investing in something that is important or under investing in something that's important. Utilities is an interesting one. It's the one that has the biggest gap from quality and importance. Yeah, not saying the quality is poor, it's still 82%, but the importance is extremely high. And so I think to your point, Councilmember McElhaney, in terms of how internet has now really come into that realm of how people think about utilities, but also how significant it is when, in terms of their importance, when water isn't working right, or, sewage issues, or even stormwater in terms of water runoff. And, we've had some specific or pretty significant rain events now. The survey is kind of coming, in the field when we have those heavy rain events here in the springtime, but that gap is interesting and one to keep an eye on in terms of that gap between quality and importance on utilities.
Okay.
Some of it might get skipped on garbage collection a couple of weeks in a row here in a minute, and we'll see how important it is.
I'll be on the phone.
So here's one that I want to spend a little time with the council on. We have had a set of some statistically significant drops in perceptions around parks and recreations and natural spaces. In some of the cases, these drops have taken us from where we were in 2022, being higher than the benchmark, down to similar. Now, these are all still very high numbers, and overall, the ratings for parks and recreation and natural natural spaces in Clive is high. So this is a strength, but we look at this information very carefully so that we can identify any negative trends early and do something about it. I haven't finished looking at some of these questions by area of the city to see if there was, for example, some frustration out in area 7 because they lost their trail for the last 2 years. Or I haven't looked at the Stonegate
those
could
type
be,
of things.
it could be.
Circusina Park, some frustrations there too. So
Yeah,
that could certainly play into all of this.
that's right. Could be something very local. It could be that we just reached during the pandemic years when people were really out in those spaces and people were really thinking, oh, God, I'm so grateful that I've got this when I'm stuck inside all the time. It could be there's just a little bit of coming back to a different kind of a lower norm. So more analysis to do here. I do also want to note, though, that when we choose as a city to get behind a topic with our storytelling, we have a chance to really not only hear from residents what their concerns are and fix them, but then also do just a little bit more educating. And then after have a chance to look at some more information, maybe their perception improves. We are building so many parks right now, and we're going into a period of so much disruption in the Greenbelt that we are going to need to keep the heat down, be great storytellers, but also to tell a legitimate success, be great storytellers when it comes to our parks. So think Greenbelt Landing, think Circusina Park, all of those places. Yep, Lannan Park especially. These are going to be very important stories for us to tell. And as we do it over the next 2 years, taking some of the hits and also celebrating some of the wins, it'll be interesting to come back to this data and see whether or not there's been any movement in the trends.
Pete, the only thing I would add to that is, some of the maintenance work too, right? Like, sometimes you got to clear out a tree because, the ash borers or something, right? People get up in arms about that, right? When a tree comes down,
We know.
it's not a small deal. And so I think part of that is just that continuous communication too.
Right. This council decided to make a sort of intentional move into vegetation management in big parts of the Greenbelt. We continue to do that, but that was one of the places where we saw trees coming down in some of the most loved parts of the entire park.
Nothing that will set people off quicker than taking down a bunch of trees.
Right. The one that's on here that took one of the biggest dives that I'm particularly concerned about is just that perception of opportunities for education, culture, and the arts. We talked about utility services that are provided by private providers and how important that is as people come to expect that that's going to just be a part of living in a great community. There are some other things that kind of are outside of our control, but really significantly affect the way people tend to think about what their city's all about. Your school district, that's a real big one. And a number that I'll bring back in strategic planning for us to take a look at, and the perception people have in K-12 education right now. That'll be one we want to look at carefully. This is another one, though, that even though it doesn't rise extremely high relative to others on the importance scale, we know that it's still important, and that any great community needs to be perceived as a place with rich cultural opportunities.
You know, I'm a little surprised by that because most of the feedback that I've heard, you know, for most of the folks that I've spoken to, whether it's door knocking or at events or whatever, is the library events are fantastic. I know there's other aspects that go into that, right? Like you said, school district and some of those other things, but you know, I really haven't, I'm a little surprised by that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pete, as we look at developing hardback and some of the opportunities there as far as adult education, perhaps that might help. English as a second language, financial literacies, things we continue to develop that programming. You know, perhaps that might help.
Yep, very smart. This is one that we flagged last year around the transportation network. And when I look at these numbers comparing 22 to 24, I see relatively stabilizing or plateauing here compared to where we were last year. It's still a number on overall quality of the transportation system. That is just barely not a statistically significant difference. But if you look back to 2020, you can see that there's been some erosion in people's confidence. But when it comes to traffic on major streets, hanging in there, we are going to be challenging ourselves very much to keep that standard where it's at with all the construction we've got coming, especially Hickman Road. Very nice, though, to see that at the end of the day, even if people are thinking about parking or the flow of traffic or ease of transportation by, they still rate the ease of transportation by car in Clive is very high, and that's how
Michael.
most of our residents get around.
Let's get the public transportation piece out of the way.
I'm not, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. What year did I get off that board?
There you go. That's what I was waiting for.
And then, man, that thing shut down last year.
What's interesting about that one is, again,
Thank you.
these are perceptions of the residents filling out the survey. So there's, you know, the last 6 months, there's been some relatively negative news around DART, right? That they probably heard about. There hasn't been necessarily service cuts in our community, but it's definitely been talked about, and it's been a negative conversation. And so it's interesting to see, is that how this translated into the survey of what they're hearing? So that's, yes, we definitely noted a pretty substantial drop.
Matt, when you're looking at this, it looks like there's an overall, not just here in Clive, but across all the communities surveyed, that, you know, a little bit of erosion in public transportation too. So it's not just
We're still similar on the benchmark, we're not lower. So
29%.
that's,
similar.
that's. very
That's
well-
my point,
very well
is that
point taken out.
everybody has that perception, not just Clive.
Right,
Post-COVID has taken a hit on mass transit in
just in
general,
general,
Yeah.
region wide.
as well as the
Region-wide.
decade long commissioner that left. But
Who was that on?
I don't remember.
Arm trying to pat himself on the back.
You'll see also that very last question, which asked specifically about not mass transit generally, but bus and transit service. When asked about that, that reached a new low for Clive resident perceptions from when we first started asking this question going back to 2014. Want to give a shout out to our teams, though, on the snow removal. They have done a fantastic job for a decade now, just sustaining extremely high results when it comes to taking care of the snow and ice clearing.
I think
it'd be over 90.
That's what I agree.
So this slide, though it is just one slide, I think is probably one of the most important slides in the deck. So over the past, since 2018, since I've been handling and helping interpret this data and responding to it with all of you, we've been on the lookout for any kind of splits when it comes to area of the city and perception of services and infrastructure. One addition to the survey this year that's really powerful is that easy crosstab tool. And I've sent to all of you the link, and I'd encourage you just to go and start playing with it, to start seeing specifically by area where we are starting to see statistically significant differences. I've just pulled out a sample here of questions across all of the different facets of livability to give you some examples. Not every one of these differences that you see outlined on the right-hand side of the text is statistically significant, but most of them are. The one that gives me some of the most pause are things like overall quality of life. In Area A, which is the 86th Street neighborhoods, pretty much everything east of the railroad tracks, the area we're calling the 86th Street neighborhoods, there is a substantial difference in perception of quality of life. So 68% are still saying it's good or excellent, which is good, right? That's a good number still, well over a solid majority. However, compared to the way that other residents in Clive feel about it, it's very different.
Do we have a breakdown of that between those who live in apartments versus those who live in single-family homes that answered this survey?
Yes.
We do.
I can't go 3 crosstabs deep though. I couldn't give you single family versus multifamily in just Area A, District 1. But I can give you all respondents, single family versus all respondents, multifamily.
I would think that would have a pretty significant impact.
Which our highest concentration of rental
Right.
properties is in that neighborhood.
Yep. So housing, yes, I think we would see it there, but in my clicking around, there's actually a more consistent trend that I see, and it has to do with income, which is then very closely
I
tied
mean, yeah, exactly.
to housing. Yeah. Value for taxes paid, another one that we take real seriously as a team. You can see another big split between Area A and all others in the range that they fall in. Overall quality of the transportation system, another big split. Your neighborhood is a place to live, quality of the utility infrastructure, overall feeling of safety. That's one that is has a particularly alarming split, with 61% saying good or excellent, which is still good, but relative to the rest of the community, a very, very different number. All of these facets of livability, again, are intertwined. Safety is related, I believe, to economic sentiment. The perception you have of your school district and your school in your neighborhood is very tied to how you might feel about the neighborliness of your community. All this stuff touches each other, which is in some ways an optimistic thing, a positive thing, because it tells us that we've got a lot of tools potentially at our disposal to start working on these issues. That's why I think you see a variety of recommendations in a plan like the 86th Street Neighborhood Plan that has to do with transportation, it has to do with housing, has to do with parks and amenities. There are a lot of different ways for us to keep working toward good. One of the questions, though, that it's impossible not to ask when you look at a slide like this, I think, is this question of fairness. Are we being fair in our service delivery to all residents in Clive? Or potentially, are there things that are being reflected here in these responses from some residents that are outside the scope of what is the city of Clive's responsibilities? Those are interesting kind of scope of government and policy questions that are sort of before all of us now, but more so than any other year, we can see that there is a split area in their perception of the city of Clive. It's not in every area. I'm happy to say that when it comes to governance, one of our strongest performance areas, there's still quite a bit of overall kind of similarity across respondents, regardless of where they live.
Which is interesting because then you get into the definition of governance and their perception of governance, because you could tie many of these things into governance. This page, if you broaden that out, right, and loosen up natural environment, parks and rec, that's governance. You know, utility maybe, but taxes paid, not so much. I mean, it's got to be across the board. You can't say this neighborhood pays this and this neighborhood pays that. But some of those are governance issues, or it could be seen.
Could be, yeah. I wanted to present this in pretty just, let's compare numbers. I didn't want to, I'm not trying to make any kind of a qualitative point here by calling these out. It is though, one of the strongest signals yet that we've seen in any of the data, any of the years of surveying that I've been a part of, that this is a persistent and a pronounced difference.
I think what I would say too, it reinforces, I know this council has had a big focus on that neighborhood, and I think it just reinforces that we still got work to do. And even spending more time and trying to understand, at a staff level, we've talked about, again, some of the survey questions give you broader, don't necessarily define what economic development or what some of these terms mean. But again, maybe this is okay. We need to spend even more time in terms of digging in. Maybe it's micro surveys or whatever we can find that works. I think part of our partnership that we're working on with the school district in this neighborhood with this upcoming event is what goes off from there is their joint communications where we can start to dig in and maybe define more where these perceptions or gaps are. So what are the things that we can look at as a city, present that to you, have a discussion about it. What are some things that are maybe outside our purview to get kind of drilled down even deeper in terms, I know we did some of that with the 86th Street neighborhood plan, but again, we were doing that during COVID. It was a lot harder to get that in-person engagement. And our hope is our collaboration with folks like the school district who also wants to understand some of that for their service areas. How can we work together to drill in a little bit more and get better defined on what would be some things that could maybe move the needle on these perception challenges or differences that we have between this neighborhood and others in the community? That's ultimately a policy question and direction for you all to decide, but I think you've had that top priority focus in this area for a reason. And I think this slide just continues to reinforce that. We got more work to do.
One of the other big predictors of sort of splits in sentiment among residents is income. So we had 4 income groups that we were breaking out in our crosstabs. The lowest household income group was 0 to 50,000, and then 50 to just about 100, 100 to 100 to 200, and then 200 or more. Consistently, when you look at how residents who are in that 0 to 50,000 range respond on a host of questions about services in Clive, they're consistently reporting a very different perspective than households that have more income. The reason I started kind of digging in on that demographic, though, was one of the results that the surveyors pulled out that we need to be attentive to was the sense that Clive might be seeing some decline in the way that we are taking care of vulnerable residents. And at first I didn't quite understand what did they mean by vulnerable residents. So I started looking at the crosstabs to see if it meant households with kids or households with an elderly person there as well. Did it have something to do more or less with area or sex? What I found is that overwhelmingly, it appears that it is driven by household income, that if you are in that 0 to 50,000 category, your perception about how Clive is doing taking care of vulnerable residents is quite different compared to all the other income groups. And it tends to make sense, right? It kind of lines up with common sense that when you're stressed about your basics, like your housing and your food, and stressed about your future or the future of your kids, or feeling like you're falling behind, which we know has been a sort of a question in the United States that's been getting quite a lot of attention for many, many years now about how far dollars are going when you have inflation, or whether or not people in one generation are feeling like their parents were able to get further along at that point in their lives than maybe they are. This question about, are we progressing still? Is there something that we're advancing, or is it something that's still kind of holding me back, or I'm not going to be able to do as well? These questions are swirling all around us. And I think that in households where that immediate pressure seems like it's always there on the basics, housing, transportation, job and wages, food, that is adding up to a more negative perception in general of just what it means to be part of the community.
And Pete, I don't disagree with you on any of that. I think there's also an element of kind of the reinforcement you're hearing in the media or whatever news sources you decide to listen to, anywhere really. But, Matt, you were saying earlier, like, DART was in the news in not a great light this year. And that might have been driving some of that sentiment. I think, another one to keep in mind is, there was some public problems with the food bank issue, recently. That might still be in people's minds as well. That might have some effect on, I'm not saying that's the whole effect, but that may have been on some people's minds as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you look at vulnerable, you look at inflation, you look at, the cost of food and general goods and services right there. People are feeling more vulnerable, the cost of gas, things that there's a lot more pressures, maybe a general dissatisfaction with the overall government climate right there. I think there could be a lot of things. I agree with you that certainly the news does affect people's perceptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is very vague too, right? I mean, like you said, how do you define vulnerable, but then also how do you define take care of? No, I mean, and what is the city's role in taking care of,
Right.
right? I mean, that we can go down a whole lot of rabbit holes there. So it's just, it's very broad. And I
Yep.
don't know, to me, it.
For
doesn't mean
me,
a lot.
it's I guess it's a question of, do we dig deeper? Is there some evidence here that makes us think, all right, do we want to take a little deeper dive to understand how residents feel about vulnerability? Or in the question, ask also, do they think there's a role for the city of Clive to play? An interesting topic that our friends in West Des Moines right now are talking about. I don't want to speak out of turn, but they know that their city, like all cities, have got some tough financial questions and some tough financial choices ahead. They're wondering whether there are different ways for them to think about providing social services. And there's been a little bit of public airing of I guess, public debate about what the right path is there. But it's one of those questions that as I see it happening in West Des Moines, I wonder about that for Clive and what kind of requests might be coming in the future, what kind of needs might be emerging in the community as well to provide and help build some insulation, some protection from some of those vulnerabilities, I guess, for Clive households.
I don't think, and I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn for the council, but I don't think we'd ever turn down more data, right?
No,
I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
I think,
Sure. Yeah.
but I mean, it's, do we have the bandwidth available to do that from a staff perspective? I think is the one thing I would.
Yep. We're on a path to continue to do that good study. So the DIP study, that's another place where I think we're going to potentially see some interesting information on this as we try and understand what the demographics in Clive are going to look like in the future and what might be going on with property values. I think could potentially learn a lot just from our participation in our regional partnerships. So this housing discussion is getting more and more momentum, it feels like. Along with public transportation. And then, as you mentioned already, Councilman, the whole discussion about food vulnerability and some of the negative stories that came out around the providers not getting along and standing in the way of helping address that food vulnerability need. So that participation and staying involved in the conversation, I think is going to get us more and more insight.
Well, and you know, you mentioned a couple times so far, like vulnerable wasn't defined in the survey,
No.
economic health wasn't defined.
Yep.
I mean, is that intentional, or is there an opportunity to potentially, I mean, I get it. We don't want to steer people towards a predetermined outcome.
Mhm.
But you know, there is also an idea of calibration.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know if there's an opportunity there for future surveys to do a little bit of, again, not trying to steer, we don't want to steer people towards an outcome. We
Right.
want them to feel like they're giving us good feedback.
Right.
And that's what we want, but maybe there is a calibration component.
Yep. I can ask our survey partners what we might be able to get that would help us further see into this part of the survey. I do know they're getting ready to launch a standalone economic survey tool that we might want to consider for future years, depending on its quality. We'd want to be careful to assess that. It's not cheap to do these surveys. And we also know that we have to get a lot of people responding to get valid results. And we've seen a lot of
and over
fatigue.
many years in order to get trend lines. And so it's like a commitment, right? It's not just a one-time thing.
Right, right. Okay, so we asked our special question of residents about, well, how do they prefer to get information from the city of Clive? And the two results were all, it was, you can say, it was a very important source and an important source or not very important source for your choices. The most utilized communication platforms that Clive residents like are the website as a major source and mail, hard paper mail. That newsletter, that utility newsletter, and all of those notices we send out about road construction and about utility disruption. There was no statistically significant difference.
Really? Okay.
I did. I immediately thought, oh, golly, what happened here? But we also,
Pete, there's been a noticeable difference since we have changed the newsletter and it's color now. We're producing it in-house. I've heard people say ever high remarks about that. So,
good. Yep. It is one of those tools. I've said it before. I thought when I started that was one of those things that I was going to have to work on early on to figure out a pivot, but we've built up tremendous equity in that tool. And the quality has stayed high. And I think that folks have come to just expect that this is a way that I'm going to stay engaged with my community. Yep. So as we think about moving forward, where do we choose to invest? We need to layer communications across all different types of platforms. We do need to be in social media. We do need to be in earned media. We'll continue to do all of that. But if you think about making your investments in your best performing equities compared for this audience are your website and your newsletter. So I think it behooves us to think about what steps we can take to keep improving those tools. When we asked about text, standalone, would you like to get information from the city regarding via text? Results were low. Most folks said that it was going to potentially be a good source or it's not a source. They may have been saying, I don't really get text from the city of Clive today, so I really don't have an opinion on the relative importance of getting it that way. But when we specifically told them we planned on starting a new texting service, we got very, very strong results with a large majority saying they were likely to sign up for that texting service if the information was in some certain categories. They don't want to get all the information from Clive that we had to tell via text. They want certain information via text. And I outlined some of those there: severe weather and flooding, emergency preparedness, winter-related information, road projects, detours, closures, and curbside collection. I was talking with the exec team earlier today about how a lot of getting good grades and good marks from our residents comes down to how well you do your basic blocking and tackling when it comes to comms. Tell the simple stories accurately, tell them in a precise way, tell them in a timely way, and you're going to be giving people what they want. That's really important to just overall maintaining trust and keeping these high perceptions.
Well, I know we've talked about, like, with the text system, you got to find that balance because you can't have too few and you can't have too many, right?
Right.
And so, but I think this was an excellent question. What I'm taking away from it is people want to be able to make their own choices on what they get, right? So any service provider or vendor we use, we want to make sure they're able to parse out.
Yep.
Hey, which of these 4 or 5 services do you want, or, information sources do you want? And that's all you get.
Absolutely.
Good point. Is that an option then for these providers?
Oh, yeah.
It is.
You can kind of check like,
Topics.
I want severe weather and flooding,
Right.
winter weather updates, but I don't want road project
So
notifications.
this is essentially consent management. There's tons of, built-in options to a lot of these platforms
Sure.
that can do it.
Yep.
And you can even go back, usually there's a link in the email or something, or in the text where you can go back and change your preferences. If you
Yep.
decide,
Update it.
hey, I
Nice.
do want road projects.
When a road project is near you.
Exactly.
All right, so let's wrap this up. So here's a quick rundown of our largest individual increases and decreases from last time. But the big story there is that 101 of the 123 questions were statistically identical to where we were last year. This is an overwhelming story about consistency and excellence in the city of Clive. Next steps. Similar to the way that we really got behind the storytelling on the budget this past year, I think because the results here are so positive, it behooves us to really put a strong effort behind this on storytelling. Last time we did this, you saw a lot of the results showing up in the mayor's state of the city address and a lot of the newsletter copy. We're definitely going to do that, but we're also preparing to do some different video storytelling around this and figuring out other ways that we can share the information with residents. Definitely want to do a good earned media push on this too. One place where you'll see it early on will be in the Home Show publication, where Molly has created, she was here, Molly's got young kiddos at home. We've already created an infographic that's going to be featured, sort of a 2-page spread there in the Home Show publication. So everybody have a chance to see some of these real positive numbers.
It's a good scorecard.
It's a great scorecard.
And one that we want to tell both externally, and then thing that Pete and I have talked about too is telling it internally too with our staff and kind of following strategic planning. And of course, the timing of this, we're very intentional, knowing that you all are coming into strategic planning. We have some of these policy questions and priorities in front of you, and we want to make sure we give you the latest data to be informed on that and that process. And then following that too, how we share the story with our staff internally, because there's some great numbers here to share. And then as always, areas that we need to do some work in too. So good.
Great. And if there aren't any other questions, I can move on to the next item, Mayor.
Please do. Thank you, Pete.
So the League of Cities has produced their annual memo on legislation of interest to cities. We're not going to go through the entire document. It is in your packet, and I think we previously shared it in a Friday email. But I want to call out a handful that are going to lead to some actions coming before this council. Some that we definitely know are going to lead to some actions before the council, some that seem likely to create some action before the council. First one is publication requirements. This is one that more or less is in Matthew's court. We have some flexibility now when it comes to publishing, especially if we have a newspaper of record that for one reason or another can't get the publication done in the timely nature that we need it to be done. However, like all
Sound familiar from last budget?
yeah, like all
Not again.
contested pieces of legislation, the Newspaper Association has now started throwing up a little bit of sand, kicking a little sand to see if they can still get fees from the cities for some of the publication notification or proof of publication that we need to get for a
What
number
kind
of
of
our
flexibility
actions.
do we have on that, Pete, they're talking about as far as print? Where are they going with the flexibility issue?
The big flexibility goes to the really rural, small communities where they don't have a newspaper that's publishing weekly or twice a week, so forth. When you've got a certain window that you've got to hit, the 4 and 20, for example, and you don't have, you have a council meeting then and you can't get it published in time and stay within that 20-day window. This now allows those cities to do publishing right there or qualify as having published when they put like up on their website or posted in another place. So that's probably the biggest effect of this. The other one though has to do with money and do we have to pay to get that affidavit or proof of publication? Right now, we have to do that. That's an important revenue source for a lot of these smaller newspapers. This legislation gives us a little bit more flexibility or a little bit of protection from those types of expenses. Matthew, anything you'd add on that point? Okay. This is definitely one that's at Matthew's court. So every time you see those notices of publication, this is one of those things that we'll want to make sure that we're complying with SF 2331. Civil service hiring. The big point here is we have more flexibility now in the whole civil service process. So really, we're talking about police hiring when it comes to the city of Clive. You will all have the choice now to suspend some of the civil service requirements, specifically the requirement to sort of make a list when you want to hire a police officer. When we're going toe to toe with departments that don't have the same civil service requirements that we do, and they're able to say, wow, great candidate moving here from Missouri or some other place, not coming from another part of the state, you'd be a great addition. Let's go. Well, we're stuck having to go through the list creation process and working through that entire list, which creates time and missed opportunity. So now we will be able to choose, if you so choose to do so, to sort of suspend some of those requirements so that we can be more nimble when we're making those hires. But it's specifically about the civil service, the positions covered by civil service. And for us, that means police.
For example, our neighbor to the west, Waukee, doesn't have the civil service requirements. So we could be competing for the same candidates and they could go faster.
Yep.
How is that, Matt? Why don't the same requirements affect both cities?
Because of the size of Waukee was when the civil service law was implemented. They were smaller. They were much smaller than us and we were a professional law
They're
enforcement agency.
grandfathered in or something, or?
The state law is definitely not perfect and it doesn't require just because they grew. It was a snapshot in time. Part of the reason we're not civil service on the fire department side and some communities are because we were a completely volunteer fire department at the time that law was put in.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if the playing field was level all across the board. And I'll be honest, I think there's some advocacy for whether civil service has lived its time and whether or not it's something that we should be looking at going in a different, and I appreciate the legislature at least looking at that.
Yep.
As this is maybe a first step to more steps of how we level the playing field across public employers across the state, especially in these public safety positions that are very competitive.
Yep. Topsoil construction site permits. You've heard me talk about this quite a bit. You will be seeing some interim language that'll be added to the stormwater management manual in Clive that we need to put in place while we're sorting out all the other changes that need to be now made to the manual. During strategic planning, we might have some discussion about sort of the best strategy to get those changes made. We're thinking at this point that some outside help would be beneficial for us to get that done because our water resources team is not huge and we need to really make sure that our water resources engineer can focus on development review and some of that core areas of some of her are their core areas of responsibility. So we may need a little bit of bandwidth help with an outside partner, but we can have a larger discussion about that. We already have received good direction from all of you on what you would like to see as sort of the net outcome, where we're not making things more burdensome on the developers, while at the same time still achieving some of the needed results when it comes to stormwater management and doing it all while complying with the law and the spirit of the law. And I think there's a path forward to doing that. After talking with Doug and with Ray about it, we're pretty certain that even though the law went into effect on July 1, we haven't had any new development come at us that wasn't already kind of governed by an existing stormwater management plan. So we haven't been in a fix yet. And Doug thinks that with what he sees on the docket through the end of this year, we've got the time we need if once we get that interim language introduced in the manual to then take some time at the rest of 2024 to finish our updates. But then once we do make those changes, those would be coming to all of you for approval. Property tax omnibus, the big change here, I guess a few of them. One, there are some changes on that big property tax notification letter that's going out to all of the property tax paying folks. That will have a little different look and feel. I haven't seen what that is going to be yet. I wouldn't expect to see it until right around springtime when we're going to be dealing with it. We'll be ready. We've got a good game plan in place to get ready for this. The other big addition was, besides some change around with the dates, was the introduction of this next step in the ratchet. So previously there were 3 little buckets that you could end up in for the type of haircut that you were going to get, depending on how your valuations changed. They've added a 4th sort of step on the ratchet there. I don't think, unfortunately, I don't think that this is sort of how we're going to end up leaving things once we get through the next legislative session. There's some strong signals from many leaders in the State House that they want to revisit property taxes again. Potentially, if you look at groups like Iowans for Tax Relief, they're now proposing that we go to a flat sort of cap on what revenue increases could be for every city, regardless of sort of the uniqueness of your city. We'll see what comes of that. But it definitely has been for a number of years now across any different types of taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, income taxes. There has been a ton of legislative action. And I see that trend continuing as we go into this next legislative session.
It'll be a big subject, strategic planning like it always is in terms of our financial strategy, but I think we'll be coupling this with some legislative strategy changes that Pete and I have been discussing too.
Yep. ATEs, automatic traffic enforcement, we don't have any here in Clive. And so the reason I wanted to call this out was to just put everybody sort of mind at ease. Those flock cameras, some of the cameras we use at our intersections, so forth, those are not prohibited the way that the ticket writing speed cameras are, which got most of the attention during this debate. However, it is a preemption bill. So if the city of Clive should choose to take a different direction in the future, and this bill is still on the books, then we will have considerably more hoops to jump through to try and achieve that outcome if that's what the council wanted to pursue.
We have to get over 20,000 in population now too.
Yep.
Because they're prohibited for any city below 20,000.
Yep. Boards and commission omnibus, this is just a direction from the state that it's now not required, but the city of Clive has had a good balance on those. And I understand that it's still going to still be our process moving forward to try and preserve that balance when it
When does
comes
that take
to gender.
effect, Pete?
That bill,
I think it was July 1, wasn't it? Or was it January?
Apparently it has numerous effective dates.
numerous effective dates.
Thankfully, we're already doing it, so. It also, one thing it was also too, is it gives, there used to be some kind of vagueness of whether or not elected officials or participants, you know, whether or not they had to have a significant reason why they couldn't be in person.
Yep.
It kind of softened that language and made it very easy for you all to, if you need to participate virtually, you can.
Yep.
And that's for board and commission members as well.
Yep.
So it kind of softened it a little bit. I mean, we were kind of going with it the way it was even during COVID, and I think we were fine, but now it kind of gave a little bit more guarantee across the board.
One more that in effect might not have a huge effect on the way we do business in Clive, but will require some council action, has to do with our development agreements. That's HF 2388. That has to do with residential facade materials. So this was an interesting debate in the State House, putting a lot of different groups against each other that maybe sometimes don't line up always the same way. at the end of the day, so much of the development that happens in Clive happens within the context of a development agreement where the developer wants something and the city wants something as well. And so now we'll be able to continue to do that kind of negotiating to get the really great results that we want, results that yield survey data like what we saw where people are overwhelmingly happy with the quality of new development in the city of Clive. So a testament to Amanda and to Catherine and to Doug that they are able to kind of steward that process along to keep getting good results, but do it in the context of complying with the law. There will, though, need to be some language changes, potentially some changes into the way we do accessory buildings as well. To keep, right now, we ask that those are sort of the similar style to the primary structure as well. What does that mean now for the material that's on the side of those accessory buildings? Our team is working on that right now, but they're still feeling good that we're going to be able to keep doing things more or less the Clive way. So those are the ones that I think are going to have some touch with you all as a council, either actions that you'll need to take or laws that will affect the way that you do business. And we'll continue to get ready for the next legislative session as we comply with these changes from last year.
Very good. Any questions for Pete? Thank you.
Thank you.
And once you get back to your seat, what else have you got?
I've spoken enough tonight, the honor. Thank you. $5 report.
Very good. Shrikant.
Just a quick report. We did have a meeting with the Reimagine Dart consultants. It was Mayor, Matt, and myself. I was only actually able to attend half the call, unfortunately. Oh, and Michael,
and Michael
sorry.
as well.
He's giving me enough crap that I'm okay leaving him off, but yeah, we did talk about, what are the things that, we would want to see in a public transportation system. What are our must-haves? What are the things that we see as challenges to that or blockers, however you want to categorize it? So some good discussion. We did, I think we provided candid feedback, at least the part that I was there. We were pretty blunt about, not all of us
It didn't
saw
stop
the-
after you left.
Okay,
trust me.
I figured as much. But provided some candid feedback on some of the challenges and some of what ends up looking like spinning our wheels, right? Because just one survey after the other, or whatever the case, same discussion over and over. So I think we provided some good feedback. But Mayor, Matt, if you've got anything to add.
I think I refer to it as the hamster wheel. We need to get off the hamster wheel of DART in terms of these discussions and get to a sustainable solution.
That would be nice.
That would be Mayor, how I would characterize.
Yeah.
Our
That's a fair
comments.
assessment.
So that's all I have.
Thank you. Ted.
Okay, a couple things tonight. Clive Community Foundation met today. The goal this year is to raise 65,000 to be able to do grants for needy organizations in the community. Last year was 50,000, so it is a bit of an increase relative to last year. Right now, we're at about 20,000 raised, so we're a little behind, but we have a lot of asks out to various Clive companies and organizations. And apparently past history is a lot of those tend to come in towards the end of the year. So we're still optimistic that we'll at least get close to that goal, if not reach it. And then the other thing the board did was we did pass a kind of an emergency a grant for Crestview that Richard, I believe, is leading up, $2,500 that the school had asked for to be able to ensure that every kid has a backpack. And so the board unanimously approved that, $2,500. And I know Richard's kind of leading that charge and coordinating with the school to make sure that happens. So that got passed today. So.
And that's paired with our August 9th
Right.
Joint
The
city
back to
school
school
event.
event, yeah.
There was an ask sent to them about, we really need to get backpacks, and the foundation stepped up, and that will be a big part of that event, is distributing those during that August 9th event at Harbach Center.
Yeah, so that's a real nice thing. Metro Waste. And it's too bad Mike's not here, actually. So I'm sure we're going to have some more conversation about this as strategic planning. But one of the things that Metro Waste is dealing with is trying to figure out the best way to move forward with kind of almost think of it as a model ordinance, but a model kind of plan for storm debris cleanup that each of the communities can go by. Now, the challenge, because that is in place currently, it's a 10-year-old plan that needs to be revisited. But the challenge that I think that they're experiencing is that they kind of have this model of here's the different levels that we go to, and here's what Metro will do. But then elected officials get 3 or 4 phone calls and they cave, and they don't follow the plan. And so what you'll have is a Windsor Heights resident calling into their community, just as an example, because they're not picking something up, but Urbandale is, and they have very similar damage, right? And so anyways, what Metro Waste is looking for is some guidance as to, do they put forth the effort to kind of revisit that plan and put a more detailed plan in place that then across the Metro, the electeds are willing to kind of follow as close as you can, knowing that there has to be some flexibility, right? And in there, and that it's not linear. Damage can be different in different places, just like we had before, where east of the interstate was one way, west of the interstate was something else. So, but they want to know, do they go forward putting forth that kind of what they're calling plan 1, this first level, because then if they do that, then they would go to the next level, which is more structural damage. So if we have something that's more severe, like in Greenfield, okay, well, now what's the plan and how does that look like? So, but they don't want to go to that level if they don't even have the first level. So, so that's, I think, more to come as strategic planning. And obviously Mike knows a lot more of the details of that. And then the other thing that the Metro Waste Board is looking at is, what is going to be the policy of Metro Waste in accepting significant amounts of waste from these big events from other places around the state, because Metro Waste is the largest in the state. And a lot of these communities, they don't have the landfills, and they're looking to Metro Waste to take that type of debris in. And obviously there's a cost to that. And so what is our policy in allowing that, going forward when we have all of these big events? They're happening more frequently, and Metro Waste is being asked directly by the governor in some instances to provide that type of landfill services. So a lot going on there. You missed, it was actually like a long meeting, John. It wasn't 10 minutes. I couldn't believe it. It was like an hour and a half long.
Wow.
It was, I yelled at McCoy afterwards.
Anything else, Ted?
That's it.
MPO is good.
Yeah, nothing going on with MPO of note.
Okay. Greg?
Just on that note, I know the MAC has also discussed that same type of level of response to a uniform action plan with Metro Waste, and when do we do cleanups and when we don't. So I know they're trying to provide some guidance and work with Metro Waste as well. Mary and I sat in that meeting, so that is an issue that's
Regional topic.
a regional topic that's being looked at. Just an update on the 3 to 5 Dallas County Supervisor effort. Waiting for some numbers from Mayor Clark as far as where we stand overall. Here in Clive, we're about 65% to our stated goal of 500 signatures. We compose 9% of the Dallas County population from this area. And so that's how we can, that 500 right there. So we feel strongly that from a Clive perspective, we'll be able to hit our number in the required time. And when I get an update on where we are for regional effort, I'll pass it on to everyone.
And what's the deadline you're working toward?
It's 60 days before the November 5th election, so it's August, middle of August,
Mid-August, right?
somewhere in there.
About 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Anything else, Eric?
that's it, Mayor.
Council?
No report, Your Honor.
Pat?
Your Honor, just a few things. Just a reminder of the retirement receptions tomorrow. Again, there's just kind of a general open house from 11 to 1 in the Northwest Conference Room for Roxanne, and then 3 to 5 for Chief Venema. And then Also want to thank the council. I know you went through the last couple of weeks here, strategic planning interviews, getting ready for the workshops. Lyle has everything that he needs. I'm working on the strategic issue memos that I give to you before those workshops. I'll have those to you before we get into the middle of August. And then just a reminder, August 8th, the next council meeting, we'll have that training on the new agenda management system. Staff has been using it. We kind of actually did a mirror of the items on this agenda where we submitted it to the new agenda system, and that's been going relatively good, and a few questions. And Matthew will be ready to dazzle you at 5 o'clock on August 8th to walk you through and get some links set up. And then we're going to continue to mirror the council meetings in the month of August. And then fingers crossed in the month of September, rip the Band-Aid off. So it's been going pretty good. I don't know, Matthew, if you have anything you want to say on that. I'll have a link I'll share with you. I'll have a link I'll share with you in when I send out my manager memo on Monday before that packet goes out. That'll be a link that will be the key for saving on your devices, and we'll work through with you on that. And then finally, Your Honor, just August 9th, the very next day is again that school event from 3 to 7, the joint back to school event at the Harbox Center. We're gonna have food trucks and music, a backpack distribution, and a lot of other programs. Pete and Richard, Leisure Services team, and all the departments and myself will be involved, and we'll have a little bit of a small program between the school and the city just to say a few things, say a few words. Just in terms of, we're also going to have design teams from the Lenan Park project. So Smith Group is going to be there, taking input on those design elements. And then also McClure, who's helping us with the designs of the temporary park space in the flood prone property buyout area. So we'll have opportunities for residents to, basically have some input on playground, splash pad, all the things, and kind of get at some of the things we were talking about earlier tonight of, how do we further engage that neighborhood? And this is really the beginning of what we home as a long-term relationship in terms of our engagement with the school, thinking about joint communication, specifically with that neighborhood. Very motivated school district and superintendent, as I've shared before, in that space. And so we want to take advantage of that and work together on that. So that's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any
And
questions.
what time's the program? Or is it set?
It was 4.
Program it, well, 3 to 7 is the time frame that we've.
3 to 7 is the event, but we haven't set the exact time for the program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we meet with them again on Tuesday. We're really finalizing the details, and we'll get with you on that.
Okay, appreciate it.
Matt, could you remind us what time the program is for both Roxanne and Mike?
11 to 1, just open house. There's no program for Roxanne's,
Okay.
The Northwest Conference Room. 3 to 5 for the chief, and then 4 o'clock is when we'll have the program over at the training room at the public safety facility.
Public safety for that.
Yep, just like we did last year
Thanks, yeah.
for Chief Rowe.
Makes
So
sense.
same format.
Northwest Commons Room.
Right.
Yep. So we'll see you tomorrow afternoon. And then the roast of chief after that. That's at another undisclosed location. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Well, thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we'll adjourn at 8:17.